Hello, good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. It is Sunday, April 10th, 2022. Last week we finished discussion of 37 practices of the Bodhisattva. So since we're kind of restarting like a new section of this class, I thought we'd do a review again. Those of you that have been doing this for a while have done reviews a lot, but it's really the foundation of this practice. And I will read from a book that really goes into that a little bit in detail, why it's such foundation to Buddhism, really, and any kind of spiritual practice, really, in a way. But before that, we will start by setting our intention. Those of you who are new, Buddhist practice always has three components: the beginning, middle, and end. And the beginning is setting our intention and motivation. The middle practice is the practice itself, maybe it a meditation or if it's a prayer or recitation or things like that. And the final section is dedication. So you're dedicating whatever benefit and merit you gather from the practice. You dedicate that to the benefit of all beings. We set our intentions, we use the Four Immeasurables prayer. We'll say that now together. If you don't want to say it, you don't have to say it. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. And that is made, when we say that, it's a bit more than just saying, making a wish for world peace or something, although that is encompassed in that in some respect. But when we do say that, we're making our aspirations that all beings, really what we're saying is that all beings reach a state of enlightenment, and develop their mind and purify their mind and gather enough merit to become enlightened and be beyond that state of suffering, and beyond samsaric existence. But when you say it from a Buddhist point of view, you're encompassing the view of Buddhism, which ultimately is about interdependence and non-duality. So which is really what Buddha taught. And the point of Buddhism is realizing the truth of our existence rather than the limited subjective point of view that we've been operating from, our whole lives, which has its own, relative truth, but there's a bigger picture that is really what's going on and is the ultimate truth, and not solely reliant on a subjective point of view. So when we make that aspiration, it's not just a wish or something. It's actually with full acknowledgement that all beings are not separate from us, that there's not only a connection, but a one and the sameness, if you will. For example, as like if you stand on the moon and look at the earth, you don't see 9 billion people and, 7 continents and whatever, hundreds of nations and stuff like that. You see one thing. Well, if someone never knew Earth or been to Earth would say, well, that's a beautiful thing, whatever it is. That's a truth in a way, Obviously, interdependence has a lot a lot more complexity than that. But I'm saying, we have a very subjective point of view. We see self and other all the time. That's how we've evolved as beings. And that's also what causes us difficulty. So that's why we meditate, to transcend some of these difficulties. And one of the things I want to talk about before we get into the actual practice is why we're here, And many of you came, if you started with us, came during the pandemic, when you're going through a lot of uncertainty and anxiety and suffering and difficulties and things like that. And a lot of people were looking for ways to deal with that, which are very legitimate ways or legitimate reasons to come to Buddhism, right? Or meditation, at least, because this class started out as just a secular meditation class. And then after a brief while, people had interest in aspects of Buddhism. So we started incorporating some of that. But really, we're only talking about the mind and working with the mind. There's ethical discipline that has to be applied really to any spiritual practice. And that's really basic sanity. We don't even have to teach that because most of you are intelligent enough to know what those things are. You know the difference between right or wrong. I can probably safely say we're all basically sane people, who, know that killing's wrong and stealing's wrong, or and things like that. But we have emotions and thoughts and anxieties and frustrations and petty differences and desires and competitive thoughts and jealousies and all these things that are part of being a human being that cause us to suffer, basically. Even though we're decent people, and even though we believe in basic goodness or basic sanity and things like that, yet we're still victims of these negative emotions and thoughts and anxieties and all that stuff. That's where this practice comes in. So we're working with this book called The Path is the Goal by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche was one of the main Tibetan lamas that established Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism in the West, in the United States and Europe. He founded Naropa University, which is in Boulder, Colorado, which was the first Buddhist university in the West. Meditation is a way of realizing the fundamental truth, the basic truth that we can discover ourselves, we can work on ourselves. The goal is the path, and the path is the goal. There is no other way than the practice of meditation, absolutely none. The evidence for that is that for 2,500 years since the time of the Buddha, people have gained liberation through the practice of meditation. This is not a myth, it's reality. It actually did exist, it does exist, it did work, it did happen, it does work, it does happen. But without the practice of meditation, there is no way. When we talk about the practice of meditation, we're talking about a way of being. Whenever we use a verbal form like to meditate or meditating, that automatically invites the question, what are you meditating upon, or what are you meditating in? This is a common question that comes up, but according to the Buddhist philosophy, there is no verb to meditate. There is just a noun, meditation. There's no meditating. You don't meditate. You don't meditate on something, but you be in a state of meditation. You might find it very hard to swallow this distinction. Meditating is not part of the Buddhist vocabulary, but meditation is. Meditation is a noun that denotes that you are being in a state of meditation already. You don't meditate, you just be in the meditation. Very interesting distinction. And even though you came to this class, for your, for anxieties or to be calmer or things like that, which is fine, ultimately, that's not why we're here, really. I'm going back to the book. The practice of meditation does not involve discontinuing one's relationship with oneself and looking for a better person or searching for possibilities of reforming oneself and becoming a better person. The practice of meditation is a way of continuing one's confusion, chaos, aggression, and passion, but working with it, seeing it from the enlightened point of view. That is the basic purpose of meditation practice, as far as this approach is concerned. So we're not trying to replace who we are. We're looking at ourselves and working with ourselves with all, warts and all, as they say, and trying to see what's going on and how we operate and why we operate that way. And these things like chaos and aggression and passion and confusion, rather than saying I'm wrong for having these feelings. Like I said, we're all probably consider ourselves decent people, yet you have these feelings all the time. Why? And what to do with them. And meditation practice is a way of working with those emotions and thoughts and then transforming them. What do you transform them into? Well, eventually wisdom. When you calm your mind enough to start to actually see these things as they arise and sort out where they come from. I think what Rinpoche is saying here is that we're not trying to say, well, Buddha said not to do this and not to do that and to do this and to do that, and I have to start doing these things so I'll be this different person. You're starting from where you are. Because we all have Buddha mind within us already. That's another fundamental point in Buddhism, is that we're already enlightened, right? Because we have mind, when it's resting in itself, right? When it becomes aware of itself and rests in that nature of mind and realizes the true nature of mind is enlightened. We have, through karma, have accumulated negative emotions and tendencies that obscure us from realizing that nature. So we're not altering that. We're making way for that. We're kind of clearing way for that. We're transforming what's there so it can be, so that Buddha mind can be unimpeded, if you will. And these are very difficult concepts. It's we're not talking about believing a certain dogma or saying, you shouldn't do this or you should do this. We're talking about working with ourselves and working with our mind. We're not talking about taking something from the outside. Even the idea of enlightenment, which is kind of a carrot on a stick that leads us to practice, even that should be kind of, I think, put away. If it got you here and now you're here and you're studying, fine, but really whether or not we're going to attain enlightenment in this lifetime or another really is not, it's not necessarily relevant, because basically we just have to do what we can do today, which is this, and look at our minds and work with our mind. And like I said, we're not talking about, I really don't find this practice religious at all. I've said this before. It's not a theistic religion. Buddha is not a god, was not a god, is not worshipped as a god, We're talking about working with our mind. We're not talking about, read this scripture and do what this says, and then you'll be, a good Buddhist or whatever. We're not even really trying to be Buddhists per se. We're just trying to be ourselves, really. There's a Sanskrit term for basic meditation practice, which is what we've been doing here, shamatha, which means development of peace. But in this case, when we talk about peace, we mean that for the first time, we are able to see ourselves completely, perfectly beautiful as what we are, absolutely as what we are. This is more than raising the level of our potentiality. If we talk in those terms, it means we're thinking of an embryonic situation that will develop. Like a child that might be disturbed, he has potential. We're not, we're not talking about something that we're not. We're talking about something that we already have that we're bringing to the forefront. So seeing ourselves as who we really are. It's an important distinction, It's a really important distinction. It's almost like instead of us trying to become enlightened or Buddha or enlightenment becomes us. Okay, let's practice meditation. So the first thing we do is our posture, our seat, and we should think of that in terms of something sacred, but not sacred in terms of religious or even spiritual, but like of value, of importance, of meaning, like you're almost taking your seat like a leader sits on a horse, with dignity and with self-respect and things like that. So we sit on the floor, unless you can't. If you have to sit on a chair because of whatever reason, we'll get to that. But usually we sit on the floor. Most of the times you could sit cross-legged. It's good to use a cushion to get your hips either even or above your knees. That might make you feel more comfortable. If you're flexible and you want to do like a half lotus kind of thing, which some of you may be, which is folded like this. The important thing is to be comfortable. And we like to get our body relatively straight, but not rigid, so what helps is if you're not sitting back on your sitting bones, if you're a little bit forward, that'll help keep you more erect. I don't know, you have to feel that out a bit, and it'll make sense to you when you play with it a little bit. But if you sit on the floor, if you're in a chair, make sure your hips are aligned with your knees or above your knees, and your feet should be flat on the floor, and don't sit in a reclined position. You want to keep the back straight, basically, so the energetic channels, the subtle body channels, are aligned and can move. Energy can move through them freely. Air can move freely. Shoulders are relaxed. They're not back at like attention. Hands, I use this open palm, then the back of the hand, and then thumbs touch and you put it in your lap. Or you can just put them down on your knees, relaxed. Head straight, neck straight, but the chin should be tucked a little bit down rather than upright. Just a little down, it's more relaxed, right? We will have our lips closed, but our teeth kind of apart a little bit. Tongue near the where the top teeth meet the roof of your mouth, but relaxed, not pressed. Tibetan Buddhist tradition, we meditate with our eyes open. But what you do is whatever's in front of you and whatever you're looking at, you rest your gaze upon it. You don't space out of focus, nor do you like do this intense laser-like stare. You just kind of rest on whatever, whether it's the wall, whether it's a view out your window. If I don't know if you can see in the corner, there's like a little shrine. You can put a picture of a teacher or a Buddha, or a flower, or nothing at all. I mean, I'm kind of just looking at. There's a chair behind the computer here, and I'm going to be like probably resting my gaze on that. But you shouldn't be looking around or anything like that. But but a relaxed gaze. We're going to breathe through our nose, unless you can't because you're congested or you have a problem. We're not doing deep, long breaths, or we're not doing short breaths. We're doing relaxed, even breaths. And now, before we even start the practice, now you take this seat. We set our motivation, intention, for the benefit of all beings. And before we get to the practice, I'm going to pause. And for the next couple of minutes, I don't want you to do anything. Those of you who have done this, those of you who have not. I'm not even going to say what to do. Let's just sit like a rock, a stone. Mm. I would love it if you use the Q&A function and just tell me what that felt like, whatever that means to you. So now we're in this pose. We're breathing through our nose. For those of you who are new, you probably tried meditation at one point or another, maybe with instruction, maybe with an app, maybe with a teacher, maybe not, maybe through a book, or maybe just through what you thought meditation was. And I'm sure what happened is you realized when you started that your mind was incredibly busy. It's funny because whenever I meet someone who hears that I do meditation or we do this class or whatever, they always say, I tried meditation, but my mind is very busy and I can't meditate. Every person says that exact thing. Every person I know that's a Buddhist now, that meditates now, said that at one point or another. That's why we do this practice, because mind is busy and mind thinks a lot. And everyone's does. Knows people. There's not someone whose mind is busier than others. If you start to practice, you can start to work with that busyness and everything. But that's what mind does. It thinks, and it thinks constantly. And it thinks in these chains and trains of thought that just go from one to the other to the other. So you're in this posture now. It's very important to relax, to really relax. Take a breath. Almost like sink into this pose and just relax. Basically, all we're doing is sitting still. It seems like this big deal, but it's really not, We make it into this bigger thing than it is. So what's going to happen while we're sitting here? We're going to start to breathe. If you're aware of what your mind is doing, you're aware that you're thinking. So I'm thinking, I want to be very clear in my communication with you. I'm hearing like a car that's out. I'm thinking I have something to do at 6 o'clock today. These are all going on in my mind, despite the fact that I'm sitting very still. So the first technique we use is focusing on the breath. We're going to work with our mind by working with the concept of mindfulness, being mindful, right? So for me to drink this tea, I have to be mindful, and it happens automatically, but it does happen through mindfulness that I have to grab it. I don't want to spill it. If it's too hot, I got to be careful. I don't want to spill it as I sip it. So I'm mindful of the angle to put this cup, how much I'm going to sip. And this all happens in milliseconds, almost on automatic, but it's not quite automatic because mind has to work to engage myself with this cup, right? But here we're going to use our mindfulness, our attention, to look at our mind. Like I just said, I was thinking about the car I hear, what I'm doing at 6 o'clock. We're going to just put our attention on our mind. I'm also going to ask you to put your attention on that place where your breath is going in and out. Actually, start with that. I mean, those of you who have been doing this a while know what I mean about putting your attention on your mind. But if you're new, just start with putting your attention on this place between your nose and upper lip. And put your attention on feeling the breath going in and out. And you're going to be thinking, I can't keep my attention on that. I'm not doing it right. I'm uncomfortable. This might not be for me. What he was talking about at the beginning is very confusing and weird. That's okay. All I'm asking you to do is to become aware of the fact that you're thinking. And when you do, go back to this breath. Go back to putting your awareness on where the breath is moving. I'm not asking you to sort out what you're thinking. I'm not asking you to reject what you're thinking. And I'm not asking you to follow or penetrate into what you're thinking or follow that train that's being created. I'm asking you to switch your awareness from the thought, whatever it is, to the breath. Shift your attention. That's it. This is really basically the crux of our practice. Let's do this for 1 minute first. 1 minute, which is like 0 time. But let's see what happens. If you're aware that you're thinking, go back to your breath. Okay, that was 1 minute. So that state of meditation that Trumper Rinpoche was talking about, even though we're not meditating on our thoughts and meditating on going back to the breath, we are focusing on our awareness. We're cultivating our awareness. We're trying to touch our awareness and seeing what our awareness is doing and going from the thought to the breath. That is meditation. That's not meditating. That state of awareness. That's what he was talking about. Now, there's another technique we use in this class, and most of you are probably very sick and tired of me saying this week after week, but I'm sure you haven't heard it more than I've said it, so I'm not really sick of it. I mean, there's no true Buddhism without meditation. There just isn't. And all we have is our mind, really, to work with. Yes, we have sutras, we have teachings, we have things to study, but you're applying them to your mind. That's it. So through meditation, you're creating space in your mind. So you can start to realize you're not just your fears, you're not just your anxieties, you're not just your opinions and ideas of ourselves and who we are, roles that we've fallen into, that we've accepted, roles that we've limited ourselves to, behaviors that don't serve us anymore, that are negative. You know, Garchen Rinpoche, who's my teacher, says the only true source of happiness is being of benefit to others. So if that is a truth, how do we do that? Yes, and you can just do that. You can be a very conflicted person and a person in the grips of a lot of these negative emotions and do things, say, that are benefit of others, charitable things, or even things of great benefit, like, being a doctor or being a, fireman or things like that. But when we start to work with our mind, that potential just becomes like limitless, limitless in terms of your existence becomes of benefit to others. Everything that flows from you, all your actions and all your words and all your thoughts are for the benefit of other beings. That's really what enlightenment is. That's a Buddha mind. And that only comes from working with your own mind. When I asked my teacher, Garchen Rinpoche, first I asked him about doing this class, and he said, yeah, that's a good idea, if people want to do it. And then I said, well, a lot of these students want to learn about Buddhism, and they're curious about it. And he said, that's fine, just keep the focus on the mind, because Buddha is not the name of a man, Buddha is the name of mind. Now we're sitting on our cushion, we're sitting in the posture, our legs are folded, our back is straight but not rigid, our chin is a little bit down, lips are closed, teeth a little bit apart, tongue is up near where the teeth meet the roof of the mouth, eyes are in a relaxed gaze forward, hands are either palms down on our knees or this thing, back of the hand and palm curved in the lap. And breathe through the nose. Relax. If you feel a lot of tension or uncomfortable, you can shift a little. You don't have to just stand, totally still completely. Be relaxed. Breathe through the nose. Focus your attention on that place between the nose and the upper lip. If you're aware that you're thinking, then just say to yourself, back to the breath. That kind of becomes almost like the mantra here, back to the breath, which means attention back on the breathing itself and the place where that breath is happening, going in and out. The other technique we use in this class, I started saying a few minutes ago, we use this image of the sky, but a completely clear, limitless, unstained, open, vast blue sky. And the sky is, we're using that image to represent our mind. We hear in Buddhist teachings the sky-like nature of mind. The true nature of mind is limitless, is unstained, because even when you have a thought and negative emotion, that arises from the mind and it dissolves back into the mind. And once it's gone, it may come back, you may have recurring thoughts and recurring emotions, but once it's gone, at that moment that it's gone, it is gone, and you're left with mind again. It doesn't affect the mind, it doesn't change the mind. It doesn't alter it or stain it. Like I said, you may have recurring neurosis and things like that, but those are not permanent, nor are they mind. They arise from it, they dissolve back into it, just like a cloud in the limitless clear blue sky. So if we use the imagery of the cloud being like a thought, the mind being the sky, we're sitting in our posture, we're breathing. I have a thought that I have to be somewhere at 6. Now, all I'm doing is I'm not thinking about the content of that thought or the story or judging that it's a good thought or a bad thought. I'm just recognizing that I'm thinking, recognizing that I'm thinking. And then I just see that thought or imagine that thought as this cloud in the sky, this thought in my mind, and just watch it dissolve. And then I'm back to the breath again. Or I'm just resting in that clarity of mind and spaciousness of mind. Again, let's breathe. Focus our attention on that place where the breath is moving in and out. And the road over here is busy today. Oh, I recognize that I'm thinking about that. That thought just dissolved into the sky-like nature of my mind. And now I'm going to rest in that sky-like nature of my mind. In this sense, these thoughts, even if they're what we consider negative thoughts, if we recognize them and let them dissipate, that power, negative power they have or energy they have is gone, number one. But not theoretically, but literally even, these thoughts are helping us practice because the thoughts are leading us to the sky-like nature of mind, Buddha mind, ultimately, which, fundamentally. That's what he was talking about when he was saying we're not trying to replace ourselves. we're continuing one's confusion, chaos, aggression, and passion, but working with it. We're not saying, I can never be aggressive again. I can never be this and that. If I'm bad if I have this thought, or if I'm bad if I'm desirous or something like that. Well, but that's who we are right now. We have these feelings. Now we're going to work with it. We're going to work with it by becoming aware that the fact that we have these things, right? Competitive feelings, jealousy, greed, all these things. So now you become aware of the fact and leave it where it is. Like a cloud, it dissolves back into the sky. That negative thought just took me to the nature of mind. That's what we have to remember. Okay, let's do 9 minutes of meditation. I'll probably, since we're doing a review this week, speak through it a little bit of, kind of doing it with you out loud. Focus on the breath, place where the breath moves in and out. Recognize the fact that you're thinking, whatever it is. Don't follow the story, don't judge it. You don't have to figure out if it's bad or good. You don't have to figure out if it's a negative emotion or a positive emotion. Just recognize the fact that your mind has been thinking. Go back to the breath. Or see that thought as having arisen from the mind, like a cloud that has arisen from the sky, and watch it dissolve back into the sky, leaving the empty, clear, limitless, spacious, blue mind, sky-like nature of mind, and rest there. And know that that sky-like nature of mind is always present, even when we're not, when we don't see it, and we're not, when it's obscured from us, or we're obscured from it. I have a thought. I have a friend who's, I think, is here for her first time. Is she understanding what I'm saying? We're thinking about that. I'm not going to judge whether that's good. I'll just go back to the breath. Let that thought dissolve on its own. My awareness, my mindfulness and awareness is allowing this process to happen. Back to the breath. Attention on the place between the nose and upper lip. Whatever it was you're aware of, whatever thought it is you're aware of, watch it dissolve. Back to the breath. I'm aware I'm thinking about something. I'm going to watch that thought dissolve into the blue sky-like nature of mind. And another thought, my mind is busy. I'm just going to become aware of the fact that I'm thinking and what I'm going to go back to the breath. I'm going to leave a thought where it is and watch it dissolve into the sky like a cloud dissolves into the sky. I'm watching the thought dissolve back into the mind. If you need a bigger breath of air, do it, and then go back to the easy breath. Back to the breath. Those of you who are new, you may be very surprised at how many thoughts you have, how busy the mind is. That's natural. You may have to go from thought to the breath, back to the breath many, many times. That's totally fine. Relax. Know that that limitless, unstained, untainted blue sky is the nature of your mind. Know that. Rest in it. Taste it. Have faith that that's there, Have faith that you can access it through your attention, through your awareness, and through being mindful. And you can connect it to your breath. I'm thinking about somebody, that I have to do something with. Back to the breath. The thought of that meeting just dissolves because my attention is on it. My awareness has uncovered that fact. Back to the breath. Okay, cool. So the big difference, the big takeaway is the difference between mostly how we've lived our lives, which is being in that thought. Is the thought just carrying us and taking us and the thought kind of branching out into other parts of that story, whatever it is. I have to meet so and so pissed me off last time, and we didn't finish that conversation about something, and he was wearing a red shirt, which was the same color that I wore, and I was, whatever. Our thoughts have just gone on and uh, on a constant basis. So we're stepping out from that, creating a little bit of separation with the mind. Okay, well, there's a Q&A function if you have any questions. I did a lot of talking today, but I think it's always good to get to, keep coming back to this foundational, practice of meditation. I think it's really important. I'm glad we did it. Just want to see if there's anything. Yeah, it's called taming the mind, working with the mind. How long have you been doing these sessions? This class started during the summer of the 2020, the pandemic. I have a horrible boss. Over the last 6 months, I've been documenting his evil shenanigans. HR is now asking for formal statements. Never want to be a doormat. I feel like he has this coming. Conversely, I feel some semblance of guilt, like I'm creating bad karma for myself. Any thoughts on this? Why do you feel like you're creating bad karma? Why do you feel guilty? If this is a person who's, that's my question for you. I mean, if he's doing evil shenanigans, whatever those are, I'm assuming they literally are bad, cruel or, inappropriate or, abusive, you know. Yeah, and there's there's consequences to action. So I'm curious of why do you feel? I don't know. Oh, some people are commenting on that minute when we just sat doing nothing, becoming grounded, comforted by the stillness. I just want to point out for anyone new that consistency is key. There was a period of time where this class was the only time I would meditate, but now that I do it every single day, it has become easier to sit for longer periods of time. Learning anything takes time. I think a lot of people, oddly enough, a lot of people, when I talk to them about meditation, they say, well, I tried it and it was just, it didn't work, or my mind was too busy. I mean, I guess people maybe sometimes think they're going to sit for the first time and that there's this, you're going to be in this state of non-thought, for 20 minutes, and that if you don't do that, you're a failure. And what we just did is the practice of meditation, that's what we just did. Whether you had one thought or 100, and whether you went back to the breath once during that or 20 times or whatever, that's how it goes. Even, I mean, I started meditating 2007. How many years is that? Whatever, 15 years. My mind is busy, my mind still is busy. There's days when it's very busy and I'm distracted and I get lost in thought, like probably some, like we did just now. But I know how, that there's a way to work with the mind. And meditation is not, we don't meditate to be meditators on the cushion. We meditate because we want to work with our mind so we can start to interact with ourselves and others and the world in a different way, obviously in a more mindful and aware way. but in a way that is somehow giving acknowledgement and understanding to the fact that interdependence is a reality and a truth. Even just look, we're doing this class. We don't even think about the webs of interdependence to be able to do something like this, right? And I mean, not just the fact that there's however many people here taking this class, and our wonderful producer, Nick Solidio, who handles the tech support to allow this to happen, produces this, that I'm sitting here. Someone developed this computer software called Zoom, so we can do this class. Maybe 100 people developed it. Some people sell that and make it available to this, who made this computer and this thing that I'm sitting on. Now, just what I just said probably involves thousands of people. We just take that as something, yeah, that's the reality we live in, but that's, something very profound. If you really give any space to that, give any attention to that, that's reality. I mean, the pandemic was such a great example of interdependence. Like someone gets or disease happens in China somewhere, and then a few weeks later the whole world shuts down, basically. Through your class, I've learned to apply this cloud analogy to my everyday life. It keeps me in the present moment when my mind wanders, and keeps me focused on the people I treat during my workday. I find myself so distracted by noises when meditating. What are your thoughts on white noise or focus type music? Is overcoming the distraction part of the growth, and using white noise cheating, if you will? I think white noise is probably better than music, because music creates another storyline, whereas white noise just, I think, doesn't, because it's consistent. You know what I mean? I find there were things that I heard cars and stuff like that, but you have to use the same way, because it's your mind that's being distracted. The thing really isn't this thing is just doing its thing. You know what I mean? Some people are not distracted by the same noise. It's your mind that's distracted, so you have to apply your own mind to overcome the distraction, if that makes sense. Some people find sleeping in a noisy city very comforting. And then when they go to the country where it's quiet, they can't sleep because the quiet is disturbing. That's because their mind is conditioned to the noises of a city and not conditioned to the quiet of the countryside, right? And people who live in the country, it's the opposite. So it's really the mind that has the relationship to the distraction, it's not the distraction per se that has the power, if you will. How do you deal with the inner monologue? Inner monologue is thought. It's the same thing. It's exactly what we're talking about when we talk about a thought arises. It's a monologue because it's a chain of thought that doesn't stop. It becomes a monologue. When we start to apply awareness and there's breaks in the thought, and we let the thought dissolve, you're breaking up the monologue into smaller little lines of dialogue rather than a whole speech. It's easier for me to meditate with my eyes closed. Is meditating with my eyes open something I should be ultimately striving for? In my opinion, yes, because like I said, we're not practicing meditation to be good people sitting on a cushion. We're practicing this because for living, So I would say, yeah, start with short bursts, short periods of time, 1 minute with your eyes open, maybe 1 minute with them closed or something. But yeah, I think it's important, in my opinion. My question, why and when did you get into meditation, or was it the religion of Buddhism that intrigued you? Yeah, I came to meditation through Buddhism. That's what intrigued me. So, why would I feel guilty? Oh, this is back to that question, right? Is that you? Yes, about the boss. Because I believe most people can make improvements and change, and I hate to take that away from someone. Well, but they're not going to change if they're not confronted with, the fact that they're doing something that needs to be changed, or that the people around them are not accepting anymore. This may be the best way for him to change. Like I said, you have to have repercussions. Did you take him aside and tell him, hey, you're going to get in trouble if you keep this behavior up, because the employees are going to, file a complaint, and you might get fired, or you're going to be in trouble. And you could start with that, but, guilt is a weird emotion, because it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't help us, right? If you feel like you did something wrong, rather than feel guilty, you can kind of make amends. You can learn from it. You can vow never to do it again. Those kind of things. But guilt, what is guilt going to do? Instead of feeling guilty, maybe feel. You say, I believe most people can make improvements and change, but he obviously wasn't. And you hate to potentially take that away from someone. Well, you haven't taken it away. Maybe this is what's going to change him. The fact that he's really going to be confronted with the negative results of these actions, repercussions. My mind has been like a batting cage of thoughts during personal meditation this week. Following a stressful period, the refresh session really helped me get back to basics. Yeah, that's how it is. That's how it is. Sometimes they're more, busy mind than others. I don't know if I need to elaborate on that, but I know you've been doing this a while, so hopefully you're bringing this awareness into, your daily life when you're stressed. I am having vocal cord surgery on the 19th. Will not be able to speak, exercise, and have to learn to speak again starting 10 days after the operation. I have set up my shrine. My mind is occupied with this upcoming event. I'm having a difficult time focusing these past few weeks. I'm still working with my teacher, Garchen Rinpoche, and come every week to this class, but any ideas on refocusing and leaving this upcoming operation behind in my thoughts? Thanks for all you do. Well, the 19th is coming. That's only 9 days away. From a Buddhist point of view, when we suffer, especially with illness, things like this, or, some kind of pathology that needs surgery or things like that, from a Buddhist point of view, suffering, difficulties, be it medical or financial or mental or whatever, and this is a big topic and we can't get into it today, are the result of karma that was actions that created negative karmic seeds that have come to ripen, right? So you're going to go through this. I would think of it as some negative karma ripening finally, and that negative karma now being done with after this is over. And your move, whatever it is, you may not know what it is, but have the faith that moving through this difficulty and transcending this suffering and dealing with this suffering, because you're going to have to learn to speak. It's going to be a lot of difficulty. Is clearing away negative karma, purifying the mind ultimately, so you can realize the mind easier. Is corpse pose still a useful way to practice meditation? I never use corpse pose, It may be. I don't have enough insight into that. I've been taught sitting meditation. I'm a student like you are. I'm not really a teacher, right? I'm a fellow student who has had some really good teachers, and am sharing that with you, and that's what I've been taught. Is there a difference between meditation and recitation, mantra recitation? I find recitation seems to somewhat tame your mind. Yeah, people do mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, which is a Chenrezig mantra, Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha Tara. Mantra, I believe, means protect the mind. So the mantra kind of takes the focus and energy from the mind that is wandering and stuff. I don't teach mantra meditation in this class or share teachings of it, but mantras really should be given by teachers, although those mantras, I believe, don't have to be given through an empowerment, a formal kind of ceremonial kind of thing. But if that works for you, that's good. Okay. The third component, we talked about the first one was setting our intentions. The practice is what we did. Now we're going to do the third component, which is dedication of merit. Is when you engage in these activities, you are creating merit or some kind of positive energy, and we're going to dedicate that for the benefit of all beings. I use that analogy, a drop in the ocean. When you put a drop of water in the ocean, it becomes the ocean. So the dedication kind of magnifies this intent and merit for the benefit of all beings, because the Buddhist view says that interdependence and non-duality is the true nature of reality. Right? By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara. Samsara is worldly existence. And it's pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. That's something everyone experiences, right? And that causes much suffering. So we ask, we tame our minds so we can be a benefit of others, so they also can be free from suffering and reach a state of enlightenment. Thank you, Nick Solidio, our producer, for his generosity, and thank you for coming. See you next week.